Welcome to Hello Player, a show for curious people who want an honest look at making a video game. I'm your host, Eva Carr, and in this episode we're diving into the highs and the lows of a one-man development studio and why Charles wanted to tackle most of this on his own. All right, let's get started. Hi, Charles.
Yo.
Hey. I'm going to keep doing that every episode. Let's just jump right in. You chose to do HyperDot as a solo artist and also as a one-person game development studio. Why is that?
I don't know. No, I really enjoy all different aspects of video games and such. So I really enjoy programming. I love art. I love doing music and such. So being able to combine all of those things into one medium of video games and adding that layer of interactivity was like, oh, I want to do all of these things.
Yeah.
I can't decide which one to do. I really wanted to explore and try and make it so that I can challenge myself to see like, oh yes, I can do all these different avenue things and whatnot. But yeah.
You're talented enough to do it, but how has it worked for you so far?
It's hard. Yeah, so it is definitely hard, but I also have like a romanticized version of what a solo developer is, where I do everything by myself. I do, I do all the art code programming and whatnot. I make the silicon that goes on the CPU. No, I don't do that.
You make the controllers.
I make the controllers. I get the goat that makes all the milk, which helps bring the. I don't know. You can keep going. Yeah. So I had like this romanticized version of like, yes, that all solo developers are these things.
What are these things to you? Like, what did you envision other solo developers did? Like, I'm just down to the nitty gritty. Is
Sure.
it like literally everything from start to finish, everything?
Yeah, and
like,
I
they
think
did it by themselves.
Yeah, I think that was the one thing that I didn't actually think about when I was thinking about what a solo developer was.
And what that meant to you.
Yeah, what that actually meant to me, because I was thinking like I wasn't getting in the nitty gritty of what everything actually meant.
What did everything to you mean at the beginning of all of this?
At the beginning of all of this, it meant like that game, and like if you were to isolate the game from whatever platform you're on, if you're just like, this is what this game is, then that person did everything in it.
Okay.
So like it was not necessarily, I guess I had like this idea like, not necessarily porting.
Yeah, it's like music, art design, and then also programming
and
right?
stuff. Yeah.
So it's like the core building blocks.
Yeah.
For development.
Yeah. What a lot of people would commonly refer to as the game. Mm-hmm. That was the thing that I romanticized as, oh yes, you are a solo developer and stuff. But like, I soon found out. And over the years, like, I've been doing like solo development over the years. I soon found out that like me not going into the granular of what everything actually meant was detrimental in terms of like, oh yeah, this is what like I am trying to compare myself to something that is like a really monolithic task of doing.
Yeah.
And I was trying to do like, oh yes, I do all the things.
All the things and everything. Yeah, you and I have had a couple of conversations about this, and I remember asking like what everything meant to you, mm-hmm. and it was like primarily within the game.
Yeah.
Why did you feel like you keep saying that it's romanticized? Like why did you feel that way? Like why did you feel like you should or have to or want to do it by yourself?
I guess there's multiple reasons for that. The romanticizing part was probably because like watching interviews even well before even the indie game movie which is probably the catalyst for a lot of like newer developers. Like, oh, I want to do that.
Dang you, indie game the movie.
It was before that where I was like, oh, yes, I want to be able to do all this stuff on my own and whatnot. Where I romanticized other developers that were smaller, but were able to say that, yes, I made this game on my own.
Yeah.
And those were, the scope of those games tended to be smaller. But I, of course, did not conflate those. I did not put those two things together where I was like, oh, yes, this person made a small one-level game and then did everything for it and put it up on like Newgrounds or on like a forum post or something like that. But I was like, oh, yes, I want to be able to do that, like have my own full release game and put it out there. And there are examples of people who do fit that bill before Indie Game the Movie or before like the rise of indie games and such.
Yeah.
But it was really me trying to like looking up to people in various like forums that I followed, like I mentioned previously, the Dark Basic forums when I was first learning how to do programming and stuff. I was watching people who were doing it by themselves, making these amazing games and amazing like prototypes and stuff, and being able to see them work on it by themselves and things was like, oh, I really want to do that, and stuff like that. And that also is not to discredit me, like also having a desire to work with other people, because I do enjoy working with other people on game
clearly
stuff. But I do also have like this, which is probably the second part of me wanting to do game design or like game development by myself. Is that like I have this desire to prove people wrong. There's
a part of me that's like, let's unpack that. But no, like, who are you proving wrong?
Originally,
was this your dad and your brother?
Yes. Originally when I made Tribe Games, I was bothering my dad and my brother a bunch when I was like, hey, let's work on games and stuff. I want to keep making games. And at the time, my dad, and still to this day, he's working a lot. And after work, he would then come home, and then me and him and my brother would work on games and stuff. But my dad, understandably, was getting tired and was like, I don't want to come home to then work more, and things like that. And then that was also around the time where my brother started saying like, I don't want to do game development. I don't want to code. And that was the thing. He was like, I don't want to code. I don't like coding. And I don't like doing art. So that means I don't do video games. And he wasn't aware of other things that you can do in video games, like game design and stuff. So at that point, I was like, okay, well, then I'll prove you wrong. This is totally a thing that's worth doing and whatnot. And that's where I started Tribe Games. And I started working on my first Tribe Games game called Emerald. Which was a Frogger like game, but it had like a level editor, so you can make and customize all of these different like obstacles and things, and build your own courses and stuff. Unfortunately, never got finished, but
which I think leads into the next thing too, right? Which is what's been really challenging is, I think, as a result of doing things solo. It's been one really challenging, as you said, and two, we've seen some delays together, right? I think the first big thing was that the game was supposed to. I don't even like this feels uncomfortable to say live or on recording, but it was supposed to come out initially in October. Like the initial date for it was, I think, like October 17th or something of sorts. Somewhere around there.
Where we had like an internal date of like, it was coming out. I think it was the 18th.
But we definitely had faced some delays. So talk to me about what that time was like for you and what was causing those delays and how you felt about them.
So leading up to, it was like a 3-month period beforehand. We're like, okay, we're going to make it to this date. And leading up to that, the biggest thing that we had to overcome was getting this thing to work with Xbox. And getting
achievements.
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 all the things. So yeah, we had to get it to work with Xbox, and I knew going into it, it would be a really big task to try
Yeah,
to get this
because you
all
wanted
done.
to do the porting on your own too.
Right.
Like that was something that when we started getting in a conversation, you were like, I want to do porting.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. And it was at that point where it was like, yeah, we have 3 months for you to be able to do all of that stuff. We had to really come to like the realization that it might not be able to be feasible for me to learn how to port and move the stuff over on the Xbox and make sure everything works and it all goes according to plan, and there's no faults and no problems.
Yeah.
So it was me coming to terms with the idea or the fact that I'm not going to be able to be like, oh yes, I did literally everything. But then at that point, that was when I started questioning, wait, what does everything mean?
Yeah, because we did, when we were in the thick of it and getting worried about it not, going through certain time, like we did actually ask you like, hey, would you consider asking for help on this?
Yeah.
How did you feel about that? And I think that's tied in with the, oh God, I want to do everything.
Yeah.
And I like this feels like a portion of it that, is possibly a tick of like, oh, I'm not doing everything.
Yeah.
What did that mean to you to ask for help on porting?
It meant the idea, and like I previously kind of alluded to, it was like, it was tough. It was really tough for me to be to say that, oh yeah, this is a game that I made by myself, and then I released out there, and I did everything. I did all art, music, programming, so like whatever my normal spiel is when people ask or say that.
And yet you still never call yourself a founder.
I mean,
okay. You just it's on your
email signature.
footer now.
There you go. Yeah.
Yes.
It was me coming to that realization that this is one of those times where I knew the answer to this question, where I was like, I really should ask for help, because it's not gonna be done in time if I don't do this and whatnot. And then me battling the idea of this is what a solo developer is, and I have this standard that I have to meet. I'm like, I have to do everything. And then I asked the question, wait, what does everything mean? And then I was like, well, I need to break this down. And then I have a document where I broke down what like a solo developer.
I don't think I've ever seen this document. You've never shared it with me.
It was a personal document that I just I typed it up, and I was like, what are all the different variations of what people think a solo developer means?
Yeah.
And then I broke it down. I was like, oh, these are all these things, and what traditionally people associate with a solo developer, and I need to fit this idea, or like, why am I trying to fit this idea? Not necessarily need to. Coming to the realization, like, oh, this is this kind of like romanticized thing, because at that point I was now looking at things that people traditionally call solo developers and whatnot. And then I was like, oh, but some of these people actually didn't do all of it. Like, they're like, people didn't do the music, or they outsourced some of the graphics and stuff. And I was like, oh, people ask for help. People, like, it wasn't necessarily like they are for all intensive purposes the solo developer. They were the main reason why all of these things are happening. And if they stopped, the game wouldn't have moved.
They're essentially like the creative director. They're the person who's doing everything. Well, in a small studio, when you're the creative director, you're mostly doing a lot of things. But
you're doing a whole bunch of hats.
But asking for help.
But then asking for help, and like what was my personal threshold for saying, yes, this is what I consider a solo developer, like a true solo developer.
What was that? What was your list, and where did you like do the check marks, and where did you cross off?
I started off with what isn't a solo developer.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, well, if there are multiple people working on it, so like 2 or more people working on it,
sure.
then you're no longer a solo developer. But then things got more hazy as I got into the middle ground.
Yeah.
But in the ultimate, what I consider like ultimate true solo developer, which is, you know, all the air quotes.
We do a lot of that in the show.
Yeah. But like they did everything. So they made a custom engine. They made all the art. They did all the music.
They made a custom engine.
They did.
Lol.
They literally do everything.
Yeah.
Not okay. Okay. See, I said literally, and then there's this like, well, they didn't make Windows, so or they didn't make.
This is getting into such a hole.
Yeah, like
very interesting.
Yeah, and that's where something that Ben Burns, who is like a close friend of mine.
Yeah.
Made Color Jumper. Something that he often retweets and talks about is like there's a point where you can keep on saying like, yes, I need to do everything. Everything must be made from scratch and such. So it's like, oh, I need to make this sound effect, so I'm going to go out and record it. Well, I need to make the tree in order to make the twig that snaps. Oh, I need to make get the seeds, so I have to plant the seeds in order for me to have fertile ground, I have to go into like, you can keep going and digging deep and going into like this crazy meta land of like, oh, this no longer makes sense. You're going insane, and it's okay to have like some type of foundation to start off on. So me trying to find that extreme of like, well, you made the custom engine and did all the art and made all these other things and all this other stuff. Like trying to find out what that ultimate, again, air quotes, what that ultimate thing is. It was like kind of enlightening. It was like, oh, that doesn't make sense. I am going way too, like, I am putting too much in the vague term of what everything means. So then I ended up for what felt good for me was that you made the game you made the thing that people consider the game. And not necessarily porting, but like, oh yes, if you took this out in a vacuum and this is just what the game is, you did all of these things. But I've started to even like ease on that, where I also don't want to perpetuate like this idea that, oh, there's this one savant person that is able to do all these things and they have had no help from anyone else, which I also, and even before this, I didn't think that was the case, where there is I personally have a huge like support system of like my family, friends, and stuff like that.
Thanks for pointing at me when you said and friends.
For friends. Having that kind of support system, I'm definitely not doing it on my own. I'm getting feedback from people. I'm asking what do you think? What are these kind of things that you want out of these things, and trying to like figure out what people want. Ultimately, I'm the person that makes the decision.
You're steering the ship. Yeah. Right? You're driving the car, you're steering the ship, oh God, what other vehicles are there? You're flying the plane, whatever that is. But it seems like it was that moment, right, of asking for help for porting. Yeah. That's it had such a huge impact on you.
Yeah. And I am so glad that we actually did like reach out and ask, because goodness sake, porting.
And we actually ended up I think you ended up submitting and getting passed through everything roughly about like 2 to 3 weeks before our anticipated date.
Yes.
And then I felt like there was another moment, which was like, okay, here are our 2 options. Like for me at least, these are our 2 options. We can either try to push it out, but then it'll be a kind of smaller splash. Yeah. Especially because we didn't have a ton of time with our partners. Or, we're running into that red area, right? Like the holiday season is notoriously bad for launching an indie title. And the follow-up option is, late January, early February, especially if we could, potentially chain link it in with all of the buzz around Black History Month. And you had also like another moment where you didn't know.
Yeah.
And I remember distinctly that one day where Steven shows up, your brother.
Yeah.
And you like looked at him and walked into the conference room to have a conversation.
Yep. That was one of those moments where I know the answer.
You just wanted him to confirm
I was like, I know the answer. I really don't. It's like, I don't want it to be this answer. Like, really bad. I don't want it to be this answer, because the answer was we delay it.
Yeah.
We push it from our 2019 date to our 2020 date.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I don't want to do this. Or what do you think? And he was like, yeah, delay it.
Yeah.
Duh.
What was it for you between 2019 and 2020?
It was, so previously I personally had a bunch of like internal dates that I wanted to make before. The most infamous being, I'm finishing this at the end of the summer.
Of 2017.
Yeah, I think it was 27. I don't remember anymore.
It's okay.
But yeah, it was like, I had a bunch of smaller, they were definitely more loose dates, but I had dates where I was like, I don't want to have it so that I miss another date. I want to have it so that, yes, if we say that this is coming out, then it's coming out. But coming to that realization where it was like, this isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Or like, if we do this, then it'll just be like, and then it's out, and then now it's just like out to sort of die, where we don't put nearly as much care into it.
And I remember being vehemently against that, being like, no, we've been working towards this. No.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I want to respect what your feelings are, because I remember very distinctly that you wanted 2019. And unfortunately, since it was October and Red Zone was coming up, especially, during the AAA season, it was just, for me, I was like, oh God, that's a lot to move forward, knowing that so much noise is going to be around AAA season.
Definitely. And not being able to work with, not being able to actually utilize everything that we have built up. And like, in terms of like, we've been working on like this marketing strategy and doing all these other things and going out to all these events and trying to bring awareness, and like, but then to be like, all right, now we're going to turn that around in 3 weeks or something like that. That just seemed, it seemed like it would be like ultimately a waste. And like going to like talking to my brother and being like, should I delay it? And then
as you're shaking your head, like, yes,
should I delay it?
You're like
Yes,
nodding.
yes.
Should I delay it? As you're nodding yourself to yes.
Yeah. And then he was just like, no, duh, you should delay it.
Way to be brutal, bro.
But so then I was like, I should delay it. And it definitely was like a weight off of my shoulders, because leading up to that, those last 3 weeks,
you were a mess.
Yeah, I was super stressed. I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know. I need to try and get this thing through, so make sure that everything doesn't break and stuff like that. And like, huge props to Andy Korth of Howling Moon, who helped out with porting and such. But like, I was like a huge mess, and like it kind of started with me seeing for the first time ever a commit in my repository that was
wasn't
not
yours.
Me. And I was like, oh my, no. And I had like I had a visceral reaction to it where I was like, no. And then I just got up, left, and I couldn't take it. I was like, oh my gosh. I was so mad.
Yeah.
And then like my dad was walking by while that was happening. I was like, I'm mad that I am mad about this. Like, I shouldn't be mad about this. This is somebody who is trying to help me out finishing this game and porting this game over.
Yeah.
But like, I was just like, this is against,
this is yours.
Yeah, this is against what I originally thought solo development meant. So then I was like, I eventually cooled off, and I was like, okay, it's okay. like this needs to happen because, we have to make it
Yeah.
to originally I was like, we have to make it to the 18th.
Yeah.
But like
16, 17, 18, somewhere in there.
somewhere around
Yeah.
there. But like, yeah, so I was like, move on. It's okay.
Yeah.
And then throughout that time, it was just like, there was still a ton of things that I needed to do and get done. And like, I was just like, I was super stressed out and being like, oh, I don't want to work on, or I have to work on this. I have to get this done. Oh, if this isn't in, then everybody's going to be mad and things like that. Where I was definitely getting in my head at that point, and there was just a ton of like pressure on myself, like from myself, to try and make it so that, oh, this needs to be perfect, or there can't be any flaws, and move on and whatnot.
I remember so many, hey, Charles, do you want to go get some Fanta and Cheetos moments during those like September, October times. And it was really tough to see you in that state. So I hope that in the future you ask for more help.
Oh, yeah. Like, because I did have like this original idea and intent that this game was going to be the game, or one of the games that I made on my own. And I did all these things and whatnot. I'm going to prove people wrong that you could totally do everything on your own. And I mean, to an extent, that is what happened. I still made all the art, music, programming, my spiel that I tend to give. And it was like me realizing, that, asking for help is so useful, because I've been asking for help already, in terms of like, hey, can you give me feedback on this stuff?
Yeah.
And then like, I've been asking for help in terms of like, oh, what do you think about if I did this? Or, and like bouncing ideas off of friends and coworkers and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was at that point where I was like, oh, I have to deal with the fact that this is no longer that solo, like what I originally considered solo development.
Yeah.
But like what that was like an unreasonable ask for considering as solo development. And then also being like, oh, and we have to delay it because, I don't want it to just go out there and then die. I want to be able to like actually put in proper work. And that was like a huge burden in terms of like stress. The second that we said we're going to delay it, like the huge, like a weight was lifted off my shoulder. I was like, oh, I don't have to like freak out about this. I don't have to now rush a soundtrack in 3 weeks.
Oh my gosh, I remember that.
So yeah, I was like, oh wow, that really like alleviated a whole bunch of stress.
Yeah. That wasn't unfortunately the last time either with a delay. There was something that happened in early January too.
Yeah.
Where we had a couple of setbacks.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure.
It's like the Let's Get Vulnerable episode.
All good.
About delays.
Yeah. Yeah, this was another one where it was I kind of stepped off the gas a little bit in terms of some of the things that I like really wanted to get in beforehand, before like we release and stuff. I wanted to have it so that, oh yes, the level editor is all like squeaky clean and great and amazing and all these things. But like it was a huge ask to do in a month.
Yeah.
And
because we sent out the safety build essentially, and we were like, okay,
it's like,
come October, we're gonna send this off.
Yeah.
And this will be our safety build.
Yes.
So if all else fails, this will go
then
out.
This will go out.
Yeah.
And then, that'll be great. But then I came to the realization, like, oh man, that version is not all that. I want to make it a better safety build.
Damn it, Charles.
I want to keep making it better and better.
Yeah.
But it was like me coming to that like realization that, oh, this is taking a long time. And I'm making a relatively large change.
Yeah. That was something that freaked me out internally, but I wasn't like, there's this part of me that's like, I'm not going to tell you no. Like, if it's something that you want to do, please do it because it's better for the game. And I remember, you bringing it up and being like, I want to work on the level editor, just to make it more usable,
Yeah.
for players. And I was like, Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm nervous, but okay.
Yeah, and I kept on banking on like, oh, I have this safety build. We're good.
Yeah, and you always got me too. Like,
oh yeah, like, I have
the safety build. It's fine.
Yeah, we're good.
And I was like, yeah, you're right. This is E3 all over again, where you're like, I have the safety build. I have the safety build. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. No worries.
And then you'd make like 6 new builds on the fly, and some of it didn't work.
Yes, and one of them didn't work, but we had a safe. That one.
Oh my god.
So that one actually should have been how I done this safety build, or this like progression. Is I was making incremental changes, and then I made a new safety build, and I was like making another change, and I made a new safety build. Didn't do that. I was like, oh, I'm going to make all of these changes, and then I'm going to submit. And that was a thing. That was a thing, and that didn't go well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I made a whole bunch of changes, and there was like a bunch of errors, and then it was like, at that point I was like, I need to figure out how exactly I'm going to actually make all these things work.
And it was saves.
Of course, it was saves.
It was initially achievements, and then it was saves, but that's also still related in some way, shape, or form.
Yes, because largely it was like the achievements were working, the saves weren't. The achievements were working. The
saves.
There are 2 different versions of the game on Xbox where you can get on Windows 10 or Xbox as Play Anywhere. So if you get on one, you get on the other. It wasn't working all that well in terms of achievements was not working after that first initial push. But then the saving so that you can start your game on your Windows 10 machine if you played on Xbox, that was not working and it was broken.
Yeah. And so all the way up until, oh my gosh, you submitted basically a build every single week.
Yeah.
Leading up until like 2 days beforehand when you finally got the when I got and then it was like, oh, finally, thank goodness. Oh, I can't believe that this is and this is like 2 days before launch.
Yeah.
Terrifying, stressful. I remember.
Yeah. I wasn't as stressed out because again, I had the safety build. But
you always have the safety build.
I always have the safety build. But yeah, I should have had that mess. Like, oh yes, I'll do an incremental.
I should have had that mess cleaned up.
I should have had that mess cleaned up. It would have been nice. I would have been like relaxed. Nah, of course I make things hard because that's what I do. But I don't know.
All right, Charles, what do you want to say to the listeners as we're wrapping up here?
Solo development's hard. If you didn't already know. The romanticized version of solo development where it's like, yes, I raise the goat that makes all the things, and then I do the things in order for me to make the stuff.
Prince had a band.
Yeah, Prince had a band. That is, and that's really like, Prince has a band. So when he's playing live, even though he plays a bunch of things, he has a band.
Sparkly and beautiful in center stage.
Yeah, he had a band.
And has producers.
Yeah, has producers and things
editors.
like that. Yep. Yep. Jim Jam, Terry Lewis. There you go. They existed. And like, yes, Prince also played a bunch of the instruments on the album version. Yes. But like, still, Prince had a band. Minnesota. Real Minnesotan right there.
That's it for the episode. You can continue the conversation with us and the Hello Player community at discord.gg/glitch. And don't forget to subscribe to Hello Player on your favorite podcast app. Hello Player is produced by me, Ava Carr, Holly Harrison, Ben Hansen of MinMax, with music done by none other than Charles McGregor. Thank you so much for listening, and see you next time.